Richard Brinsley Sheridan was born on 30th October 1751 and died on 7th July 1816. ये आयरिश व्यंग्यकार थे, नाटककार थे, राजनीतिज्ञ थे, कवि थे और लंदन थिएटर रॉयल के मालिक भी थे। तो बहुत ही इंटरेस्टिंग ड्रामेटिस्ट हैं। What do you understand by malapropism? Give some instances of malapropism from Sheridan's The Rivals. The Rivals इनकी बहुत ही अच्छी पुस्तक है नाटक की। तो malapropism has been defined in the Oxford Dictionary as a misuse of word, especially in mistake for one resembling it in sound. This is the word made of three French words, mal, a, propose, meaning out of place, a thing inappropriately said or done. This is what Sheridan's Mrs. Malaprop does in The Rivals. She is fond of using all sorts of words to parade her learning, but unfortunately misuses them. Only redeeming feature with them is that, in spite of being wrong in their context, they suggest the correct word that should have been used there. In an attempt to show herself as a queen of dictionary, she only succeeds in disclosing her foolishness and bankruptcy in learning. It has been rightly said that the fools often betray themselves. The more a fool tries to parade his learning, the more he betrays his ignorance. Here is a comment from Mrs. Malaprop which goes a long way to establish her in the mind of the readers or the spectators as a perfect snob. But above all, Sir Anthony, she should be mistress of orthodoxy, that she might not misspell and mispronounce words so shamefully as girls usually do. This is what she says and does herself, all those shameful things which she opposed out of her jest. To be quite emphatic, she uses the word orthodoxy for orthography. She betrays all her learning and ignorance in a single sentence. Besides, her secret, for better or worse, is out when she says, "Severely, if I reprehend anything in this world, it is the use of my oracular tongue and a nice derangement of epitaphs." The single sentence furnishes as many as 4 instances of malapropism. Mrs. Malaprop uses reprehend for apprehend, oracular for vernacular, derangement for arrangement, and epitaphs for epithets. There is another variety of malapropism that seems to be quite dominant in the play, use of words which sound a little alike and differ by a syllable or so. For example, we have Mrs. Malaprop using laconically for ironically or progeny for prodigy, but the height of absurdity involved in this malapropism to be seen in the use of words that sound alike but convey just the opposite of the intended meaning. For example, Mrs. Malaprop uses the word malevolence for benevolence. Julia very rightly indicated her characteristic feature in attempting to overwhelm all she meets in her selecting words so ingeniously misapplied without being mispronounced her mistakes. Without being mispronounced. Her mistakes are the choicest of the language and are the very life of the humor and fun in the play. The rivals would go bankrupt without her. But some of the critics, however, are not prepared to give the credit of the creation of malapropism to Sheridan. They hold that Sheridan has borrowed the idea from Shakespeare and his mother. Shakespeare's Dogberry and Vergis, the two constables in Much Ado About Nothing, commit similar mistakes of the misuse of words. Then there is Fielding's Mrs. Sleep Slop, whose very name is suggestive of the sleep of the tongue. A sure proof of Sheridan's indebtedness in this connection is found in Mrs. Twyford, a character in his mother's unpolished play, A Journey to Bath. Some of the mistakes of Mrs. Twyford have been bodily lifted by Sheridan and used in the case of Mrs. Malaprop. But all the harm that these ancestors of Mrs. Malaprop can do to her is that they prove her a stock figure, but so are many other characters of Sheridan. The achievement of Sheridan lies in the fact that he made such perfect use of a stock figure as to surpass all. Mrs. Malaprop proved so vigorous and memorable a creation that all her ancestors faded into oblivion before her, and she owned the pride of place in the dictionary. Malapropism was crowned while Dogberryism and Tryfortism were dethroned and forgotten. The creation of Malaprop is in itself is thus a great achievement of Sheridan. Please give comments to improve and share it also.